Welcome to the Empowering Tomorrow's Automotive Software Podcast, brought to you by ETAS, a single source of cutting-edge software and hardware solutions that make automotive embedded systems safe, smart, secure, and sustainable. Each episode, we'll be joined by ETAS and industry experts to discuss how electrification, automation, and connectivity are impacting the automotive industry. Now, sit back and enjoy the discussion.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to podcast number 2 in Empowering Tomorrow's Automotive Software. Super excited about building on the topic we had last time in podcast number 1 with Christoph. Today's topic is going to be what the impact of the SDV will have, or software-defined vehicle, will have on the OEMs, and what are the OEMs going to expect from the industry itself to really drive the SDV into the market. And I've brought a couple of experienced people to have a little chat around this topic with. Both of them combined have around 50 years of experience in the industry, so a lot we can learn from these two guys, Tim Weber and Jason Simon. And so maybe Tim, I'll hand it off to you to give just a brief intro to the listening audience around where your experience is and whatnot, and then we'll go to Jason for a brief intro and then dive into some questions.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Eric, and I'm glad to be part of this podcast. This is Tim Weber. So I've been at ETAS now for 22 years, working in the automotive software development areas. Lots of experience working at a technical level with large OEMs and tier ones in the automotive area, and most recently working in account management role.
Excellent. Jay, maybe give a little bit of background for everybody where you came from, so to speak.
Sure thing. So I've got about 30 years of experience in automotive, all at tier one suppliers, 15 years directly at ETAS, and then the other almost 15 at another large tier one supplier, and then a smaller tier one supplier, but all lithium ion battery related. So almost 10 years in batteries as well. And my responsibility is sales. Currently at ETAS, I've held a lot of different functional area responsibilities at those tier ones, but currently it's sales. And the last 6 to 8 months or so have been really focused on software-defined vehicles. So I'm looking forward to being able to talk about this with you guys today.
Yeah, so both these guys come with a lot of experience, and I think a lot of varied experience. So both of them maybe aren't doing themselves justice. I mean, they've both held engineering responsibility, or let's say engineering responsibilities, supporting OEs with product implementation, as well as now customer-facing roles for us here at ETAS on the sales side. So they've got a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really excited to dive into some questions on how they, questions with them and get their feedback on how they see the industry going. We talked with Christoph in the last podcast about what is the software-defined vehicle. And, just to recap in a few words we're talking about really creating a rolling mobile phone, and how does that, impact what the OEs are doing right now, and how do they really implement that, and what are they going to expect from the industry, and how do we see ourselves, or how do we see the industry working with the OEs to really create the software defined vehicle. Maybe I'll start with Jason, and if I ask you the question, how are the OEs and the suppliers going to work together, what's your feedback on that question?
Well, I think the direction of the industry seems to be a lot more cooperative moving forward when we talk about software-defined vehicle, and we talk about the interfaces that are required on the various pieces of hardware, the coalescing of various operating systems, and how applications are going to be developed. A lot of open source discussions going on in the industry. So overall, I think there's a lot of cooperation that is going on and needs to happen in order for software-defined vehicle really to become a reality, and to allow parties to also participate in the market. It also requires a lot of cooperation. So it's a really fun time, and it's also an interesting dynamic that is happening right now where cooperation is key amongst the OEs and suppliers.
It's definitely a super exciting time. Like I mean, like between us, we've got what I don't know, 60, no, 80 years of experience, something like this. I haven't seen this sort of rate of change, like you mentioned. Like it's super exciting time to be in the automotive industry. The rate of change I see in that I see in the industry, and like you're mentioning, it's crazy. I haven't been a part of this sort of rate of change in my career up until now. And I think Christoph and I touched on the open source and collaboration in needed, let's say, to really accelerate the move towards a software defined vehicle. And Tim, do you, from your perspective, do you think that the OEs are going to be receptive to open source and this sort of working arrangement with the industry?
Yeah, so Eric, yeah, thanks. I think yeah, definitely what I'm seeing with the OEMs is that up until now it's been a very hardware focused or hardware defined vehicle, basically, right? It's very hardware centric in how they develop new features or how they think about developing new vehicles. And so now transitioning to this more of a software centric focus, we're starting to see a lot more restructuring now within these OEMs, reorganizations, a lot of big reorganizations going on. And we're seeing that they don't have all the expertise necessary to really fully transition to a software centric or software defined vehicle. And so collaboration, working with their suppliers, their familiar supplier base that they've been relying on for all these years. They're going to them for expertise in this, and really a lot of information gathering. Right, they're learning as they're going. They know they can't do everything internally, and so they're looking for companies to partner with. They're companies suppliers that they've been working with, plus new customer or new suppliers. So you're going to have a lot of new companies getting involved here that have expertise in this area. So collaboration is definitely a key.
So yeah, good point, and maybe a question just to dig a little bit deeper. So, what do when we're talking about new players? Because I think you're right. I think we've got some of the old players will definitely be looked at to support the transition, but I think there's obviously going to be new players. And I think what do you think the OEs are looking for from these new players when they're picking and choosing, who to work with?
So I think one of them is, they're going to be looking at companies that work with phones, because they do see the vehicle acting a lot more like a phone with bringing in different software applications, and then access to the cloud. I think you're going to see them really looking to companies that have expertise in the cloud. I mean, we've seen it in the news already with recent announcements, from Stellantis for partnering or working with Amazon. Who would have thought, just a few years ago that Amazon would be a big player in the automotive area. And so that's where we're going to see more collaboration, I think, is in this IT area, cloud-based software companies.
Yeah, the competitive landscape is definitely changing. What's your impression on new players, Jason?
Yeah, I think what experience the OEs will be looking for will be breadth and depth of experience in the operating systems, the tools, and other things that we know and think will be important with software defined vehicle. And they're going to be looking for that kind of experience from a company that is already working in that area in some way. And whether it's other open source communities that already exist that are similar to the ones that are being created or being formed right now for automotive. And I think that they'll be looking for companies that have some of that experience. It won't necessarily, or it may not necessarily be the traditional players who are leading the way, even in this arena. It'll be very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, like if I look at some of the recent announcements, like even, as we record this, I mean, GM's made some announcements around working with Red Hat. I mean, obviously Red Hat's not necessarily new to the automotive space, but I think some big announcements and some moving moving the industry, closer and closer towards realizing that software-defined vehicle, the first implementations of the real software-defined vehicle. Stellantis brain announcements come to mind to me as well, and Altify platform for GM too. Yeah, I don't know, Jay, if you have any, comments on some of the Altify platform and Red Hat, and what do you think this means for the industry moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things that were announced in that announcement about focusing on automotive safety, that's definitely a difference to some of the other activity outside of automotive that may be similar in nature relative to third-party apps and open source. So considering the safety around the automobile is something that definitely needs to be considered. And that collaboration specifically mentions focusing on safety and doing some of the same things. So I think safety is a differentiator between some of the existing activity and what's going on with software defined vehicle. And so there'll be some changes and some opportunities on how best to deal with that. So I think it's very interesting to see some of these things coming together with an automotive spin.
I think that's an interesting point, Jason, you mentioned about safety, because I think some of these new players may not understand the how important that safety piece is, right? If they're coming from, the phone, technology, maybe safety isn't quite as important as a vehicle moving down the road. Mm-hmm. So I think, I think that's where this collaboration and I think, with their traditional suppliers like an ETAS and Bosch, will have that experience of automotive experience and the importance of safety and cybersecurity in the vehicle.
Yeah, so Tim, it's security. I think safety and security is part and parcel with safety, right? What do you guys see changing, or changing maybe from a security perspective at the OEs, or the needs of the OEs, or the needs the OEs have on the market from a security perspective? I mean, how is that changing as we move into the not complications, but the requirements the software defined vehicle puts on safety and security?
Yeah, I think what we've seen up to this point in the vehicle is that cybersecurity has been very important, around the modules inside the vehicle. So it's been very kind of component and built around the modules, like a radio or infotainment system or a gateway module in the vehicle. But now I think when you move into the software-defined vehicle where you're getting over-the-air updates, it's going to be more important to have a very comprehensive cybersecurity plan for the vehicle that that covers the entire vehicle, not just the modules, because this is opening up people to be able to consumers in the vehicle to update their own vehicles or these over-the-air updates. It's going to open the door for potential hackers. There's going to be new opportunities for hackers to get into the vehicle. So cybersecurity is going to be very important to look at a holistic, to cover the entire vehicle.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
taking a holistic approach. Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem, Jason. Because I was going to ask you to maybe comment on that holistic approach.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point what you mentioned, Tim, especially with OTAs. So the amount of flexibility that the OEs want to give the end user requires that the updates happen, and they happen seamlessly, and then they happen safely. And so cybersecurity cannot be an afterthought. It's got to be even more important than ever, because of the frequency of the OTAs that may end up happening based on new features coming in and out. And so I think it's really important. The other security aspect, not necessarily hardware or cybersecurity even focused, but the security of allowing a network of third party developers access to a vehicle fleet or a specific vehicle at an OEM, and talking about how will safety and security be regulated, if at all, on the OE side, in order to allow that community to create new features and to update hardware in the vehicle with new applications. So I think there's also a whole new category of security that nobody's really thinking about or hasn't thought about. I wouldn't say nobody's thinking about. The OEs are thinking about it, but it's a whole new area that will need to be considered when we start talking about opening this up to third party developers as well.
Yeah, Jason, we've already GM's already started down this path, right? I mean, they've
Mm-hmm.
got an open portal for third-party app development, right? Maybe talk a little bit about that and
Yeah, that's
maybe the
interesting.
impact you see
Yep,
from that.
it was an interesting development, and very forward thinking to have a developer first attitude and actually have APIs already defined and accessible. Anybody right now can go onto the website and sign up to receive information on the APIs, and you could start right now writing applications for fleet vehicles or your own GM vehicle if it did have the hardware on it in order to facilitate this. But it's something that's happening, as we speak.
So, what do you think are the main challenges facing the OEs? Like, what are they gonna main challenge are gonna pose on the industry?
I think speed, if I could even attack that question first, Eric,
Yeah.
because there already are some other players who are doing this already. And I think that speed is a really important factor. So, how do a lot of the OEs catch up with some of the other players in the market who are already doing this? Um, I think that that's probably the biggest challenge. So, how do you do it quickly, safely? How do you do it so that it's still a long term solution? So, OEs today are used to producing vehicles that they know will be in the field for a long time, and dealing with aftermarket and other challenges relative to that. But this is a different arena, because what you want is you want your customers now to be able to download features 5 years, 10 years, 15 years after the initial purchase of the vehicle. And so I think that thinking about that and the architecture that needs to be in place to facilitate that, and getting that architecture done in a very short amount of time, is the biggest challenge that I see.
So do you think, maybe Tim, do you think that drives the OEs to a smaller number of higher functioning platforms, or how do you think they cope or they implement?
Yeah, I think yeah, what I'm seeing too. Yeah, what Jason said. I think speed is definitely seems to be the biggest factor. How can they get there, very quickly, right? Because the competition landscape is so big out there right now. And so I think to get there, they're gonna have to improve their internal processes of separating the software development from the hardware development, and having a continuous integration, continuous development platform, set up where they can, more quickly develop the software, update the software, and get updates out to the vehicles. And I see them, yeah, trying to commonize on a platform. So does that really mean, less vehicle platforms? But, they will certainly try to commonize on platforms that they can use across their vehicle fleet. And so I think that's where the area of also just, cloud-based development and software development, how can they more quickly develop software on the fly, and have that separated from hardware. I think that's also going to be a key, with that I'm seeing where they're going to want to, basically reorganize and restructure internally, and it's going to take new tools to do this, and new discussions. This is going to open up, lots of new opportunities for suppliers like ETAS, that specialize in software development tools. And so I think this is a big opportunity for us to help the automotive industry here.
So, Jason, I think you're right. I think, and as Tim mentioned, continuous integration deployment is it's the only way that the software defined vehicle really gets implemented, right? I mean, I think without that, it's kind of lost. So, how do you think that? How do you see the OEs dealing with that? Because it's obviously not just going to be. It needs to be an accessible platform for both them and their supply base, I think, in the end, right?
Yes, for sure. I mean, when you think about the massive amounts of testing that need to happen, and a lot of that testing, I think, will be virtualized, so that it can be done at a massive scale in a really short amount of time. I think that's another challenge that everybody is attempting to tackle right now, and I think to ensure a safe, continuous integration, continuous deployment strategy, testing's got to be a part of that, and that's also a very interesting area where ETAS is getting involved, and we'll be able to help companies achieve that. But it's going to be critical to that strategy and the capability that the OEs want to give everyone.
Yeah. So I think we have a topic, a topic for our next podcast. We could definitely spend probably hours with some people smarter than us on the technical side around how do you really implement the true CI/CD platforms, and what's the industry going to need. But I think you're right. I think a lot of the tests, in order to implement a lot of the testing's got to move virtual. I mean, I think we're talking about shortening design cycles from 3 to 5 years to a year or less, right? I mean, maybe that's a good question. Yeah. What do you guys see the expectations of design cycles shrinking to? Maybe Jason, you first, and then Tim follow up.
You made me go first on that one. I think, I think that achieving much faster design cycles in this, I don't know how to even use the word phase, but in the first go round of moving to software defined vehicle, I'm not sure that the development phase will be able to be reduced that much, just because of all of the challenges that we've talked about today.
Yeah.
I think once those initial challenges are overcome, and there's a lot of other infrastructure in place, I think that the design cycles will come down dramatically. So, if I had to put a number on it, I bet you that they'll come down at least half of whatever they were at a given OEM, based on getting over those initial infrastructure challenges, and then being able to roll out new platforms beyond that.
Yeah, Tim, maybe answer the question slightly different, because I think what maybe you could tackle is what from your perspective. I think the OEs, nowadays we talk about, okay, I need to make a software change, and now I need to go back through my validation on that change, and to really implement, continuous, a real true CI/CD. we're talking about, hours from implementation to release, if not less. Like, how does the auto industry prepare itself for that? What's the OE's expectation on the industry to prepare themselves for that sort of massive shift?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a major paradigm shift, and this is going to take some time to get there. But again, they want to decouple the software, from the hardware. They also want to even separate the software, from the application software from the basic software, the base software, so that it's much more quick for them to be able to implement new features. And I could see it almost getting down to months, for specific features, maybe just turning something on in a vehicle. So it's going to change from the traditional, what we've seen in the past, this V cycle that's very common in the automotive area for software development, to just a totally different way of developing software, where it's in this continuous integration where they can more quickly, develop this software, much quicker than what they can do today.
Yeah, I think the cornerstone of implementing this is virtualization, which I think Jason mentioned. Yeah, it's a super interesting topic today, guys. I really appreciate you guys joining me for this chat. I think it was a lot of insightful information from you guys that are really at the forefront with the customer, really working with them to help the industry realize the software defined vehicle. I don't know, Jason, Tim, if you had any closing comments, but I really appreciate you participating, and thanks from my side.
Yes. Thanks a lot for having me. We've said that it's a really exciting time, but I haven't seen the whole industry energized like this ever in my career, honestly. And so this is a really fun time to be part of it. Every company, no matter how big or small, is acting like a startup. There's a lot of urgency, and it's just a lot of fun to be part of that environment right now in automotive. And so that's something that I think everybody's learning all the time, and everybody has a sense of urgency, no matter the OE or the tier, and it's just really fun to be involved.
Yeah, I have to agree, and thanks for setting up this podcast. But this is definitely a very exciting time, and I would just encourage everyone to continue the dialogue. I think that's the best thing we can do right now, is to continue to talk, with everyone with competencies in these areas, and there's going to be lots of new opportunities. There's going to be opportunities for designing new things that we haven't even thought of yet today. And just a very exciting time. So we're looking forward to having these discussions.
Yeah, it's a super exciting time. I agree with both you guys. I think we definitely have some topics for future conversations. I think, as you guys mentioned, really the OEs are gonna be looking for the industry to help them support them in developing really true CI/CD platforms. I mean, we've got the security aspects of the implementation of the software-defined vehicle. Lots of things ahead of us, and I think, like you guys mentioned, it's a super exciting time, and I'm looking forward to the next podcast and tackling another topic around the software-defined vehicle. So check back soon for the next episode, and thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining this episode of the Empowering Tomorrow's Automotive Software podcast. Please leave a comment or review with your feedback or what you'd like to hear in future episodes. To learn more about automotive embedded systems and ETAS's capabilities, visit our website at ETAS. That's ETAS.com.